mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What up, Night Nation, and welcome to the Knighted Ones, episode number 88. It's been a long time since we've been back on the air, but a long time, but maybe 2 days, or 2 weeks, but we're glad to be back. We are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper, our resident influencer, and an IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, the Big 12 Huddle, and our new stream that will be coming during the football season. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of those. Everybody knows we've celebrated Memorial Day yesterday. So to all of those family members, friends, and both former and current service members, thank you for your service and all of the sacrifice that you've done, both those that have passed on as heroes and those that are heroes with us today. So I just wanted to throw that quick shout out to everyone in honor of Memorial Day. And also I wanted to thank you, our listening audience and viewing audience, because we reached a pinnacle for the show. Over 16,000 views in a month. So thank you all for watching, liking, subscribing, sharing us with your friends, and just being along for the ride with us. So this week, we're a little late, but better late than never. We're going to have some of our crew back. Trey Neal is in the process of joining as we speak. Alan Levin should be joining us as well. Nobra, unfortunately, with the best hair in the game, is out, as is Josh Lazar, as his AC is down. So, but let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to talk a little UCF football first. I know it's the dead of the offseason, but there's still news to talk about with regard to UCF football. We're going to talk about rankings, the playoff seeding, the Big 12 meetings in Orlando, the NCAA lawsuit, and how it might lead to the P3. Are there new uniforms on the horizon? We think so. A new hoops transfer. We'll be talking about the baseball season and what happened, how it unfolded, and what it holds for the future. Alan will give us the oxymoronic stats of the week, and then we'll talk a little bit about the rest of the sports in UCF world. So, including a little bit about the draft and give you guys some listener love. All right, so that's a lot on our plate, but I want to start with this. UCF going into the offseason here was ranked last in the media post the spring rankings by ESPN, CBS, and all the other major outlets. So basically the question was, is that fair? Well, if we think about fairness in football, we think about preseason rankings, postseason rankings, etc. First of all, they're never fair. They're based off of old data. However, in UCF's case, there's a lot to be skeptical about. First, we have a new coach. Second, we've got a bevy of new players. We turned over quite a bit of our roster. And third, we're coming into with a quarterback situation that's questionable. So that was one of the things that was also written about. UCF was ranked with the worst QB situation in the Big 12. So is that true? Do we have the worst QB situation in the Big 12? I would say no. And the reason I say no is because, yes, we have Jakuri. Yes, we have a solid backup. And we've got someone who was going to be a potential starter for Indiana, played there last year in the QB room. Then we added some other transfers in. So is UCF's QB situation as bad as what the media would like it to portray it to be? I don't think so. We've got some guys that can pass the ball and are mobile. And yes, this is a new system with Scottfrost, but we do have KZ in the QB room as well. And from what everybody's been saying, there's been really, really good competition. The culture has changed. And so when it comes to that, it seems like we have kids that care. Compare that to the past few years where you had KJ who, this is not to disparage him, but he was overweight. He didn't participate in the workouts. He didn't learn the offense, etc. I think we've got guys that are talented, the guys that are focused, and with KZ in the room, they have the advantage of having someone who's played in the system, and not only played in the system, but played so well that he went undefeated. And that's rare in college football. So do we have another KZ in the room? No, we don't. KZ is a generational quarterback. The first year he didn't show his prowess, but I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that we have the worst QB situation in the Big 12. So going back to the rest of the team and how we were ranked dead last in the media polls and spring rankings and all of that stuff. So we did reload on the linebacker room. Yes, we lost some folks there, but we did reload on the linebacker room. Our defensive line is solid. We've got a bevy of DBs, all of whom seem to be doing really, really well. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think the biggest question mark, which I hate, is the offensive line. We did lose 3 players that probably would have been starters on this team this year, but we did bring some good players in. So we'll see. But anytime you've got a new group of players playing in a new system, especially when it comes to the offensive line, it's going to be tough sledding for the first few games. Luckily, from a scheduling perspective, I think that we're actually in good shape in the early part of our schedule for next football season, especially with the things that are going on at North Carolina. And there's some question as to whether Bill Belichick will even be the coach by the time we play against them. So we start our season at Jack State. We have NC-A&T, then we have UNC, and then we have K-State. So out of that first 4, that gives us two teams that we can cut our teeth on in this new offensive system. And then we've got UNC as well, who's got problems of their own. So that gives us 3 games really to truly get tuned up for the rest of the season before we meet Kansas State. So for me, even getting 2 out of 3, we should get 2 out of 3, if not 3 out of 3 of the first 3. That's a win. For me, expectations as far as what this football team will do, anything less than a 4, I'm projecting 4 to 6 wins. A good season, I think, would be a bowl game and hopefully a bowl win, depending on who we play. But I think that this system has shown that it can be integrated quickly. We've got the coaching staff on staff in KZ and bringing back Sean Beckton, who's been here before. We've got a good stable of running backs, with bringing some of that talent back, but also bringing some new talent in. And I think we are in better shape in the QB room than what the media would like to purport. So are we the worst team in the Big 12 coming into next year? I don't think so. Oklahoma State was a mess last year. West Virginia was questionable. And I don't see us as being the worst team in the Big 12. And I think even if we reach that floor of 4 wins for the season, with where Houston was last year, I do think they will be better. Their offense was anemic, but their defense was great. And Willie Fritz is someone to look out for, who has long-term success in everywhere he's been. But outside of that, I just don't see us being the worst team in the Big 12. I think we have the talent. I think we have the coaching staff. And more importantly, what we have this year that we didn't have the last few years is the culture. This team seems to be more bought in. There was some recruiting news that came out of one of the local high schools. We picked up a new kid He was a 3-star, and his coach was who was affiliated with UCF, talked about the difference between Gus Malzahn and Coach Frost, whereas Coach Frost and his team are coaching football players, whereas Gus was chasing stars. And there was a lot of noise about that in an interview recently within the past week of the caliber of player that they were bringing in and the why. Gus Malzahn did bring in stars. We were in some ways the Miami model, in the sense that we got guys that looked good on paper but had no buy-in to the program. We were shuffling in coaches, we were shuffling in systems, we were shuffling in his role, we were shuffling in culture, so much so that I think that ultimately there is a detriment, because what Trey Neal likes to talk about a lot is you fought for the guy to your left and you fought for the guy to your right, not for a paycheck. And I think we were in a situation with Gus Malzahn where he did not build that culture. So we have the coaching, we have a reasonable schedule. I do not think this team is the last team in the Big 12. So I'll disrespectfully disagree with that. Another thing that's coming up that's a big topic right now is college football playoff seeding. So UCF finds itself in a unique position. We finally made it to the promised land in the Big 12. There's been a lot of shuffling as far as that's concerned. And we've been down this road before with the former Big East that became the ACC. This situation isn't as dire as that is. But I do think that right now there's a lot of movement. The conference commissioners or the conference leadership is right now meeting in the Big 12 in Orlando this week. On top of that, you've got posturing in the playoff committee. This will go to a 16-team playoff. They've got permission to do that. It will happen by the end of this next cycle. So by 2026, I expect this to be 16. They were first talking about 14, but now I think everybody's on board with the 16. What everybody's not on board with, including Big 12 and the ACC and Notre Dame, which is significant, is going to the seeding and the format of the new playoff format that the Big 12 that the the Pac-12, wow, the Big 10 and the SEC are pushing forward. So how does this affect UCF? Well, first of all, with playoff seeding, we saw exactly what happened last year. They're looking to go to a straight seeding process. And what that means is whatever the committee ranks the final rankings to be, that's how they'll be seeded in this 16-team playoff. Now, how does that hurt and help? You saw it in baseball this year where the SEC had a disproportionate amount of regional hosting bids. The Big 12, for the first time ever, didn't have any. The ACC had 3. But in football, it's a little bit different. I think more in favor of the Big 12. But at the same time, that puts us in a position where you saw what happened at the end of the year last year with the SEC teams being ranked above. So the argument is the Big 10 conference that much better than the Big 12 conference? I don't think so. I think the teams are just as good in the Big 12. Now, obviously, they're not going to be as good as the best teams in the SEC, but the top teams in the Big 12, by and large, year over year is what I mean by that. But the best teams in the Big 12 are not middle of the pack SEC teams. So I don't see any way that straight seeding makes sense for the Big 12 conference. There are proponents for it. There's a lot of media money involved because remember, this is an invitational. It is not a performance-based playoff. We found that out as UCF fans a long time ago. And ESPN owns the playoff. So what's good for ESPN and their properties, because now you've had a split of the properties between Fox and ESPN, other than the Big 12, which is what I think is a saving grace for the Big 12 long term, is that ultimately the conference media rights are owned by both ESPN and Fox. So I think that does help long term. And that helps UCF because it keeps us relevant in a relevant conference. Straight seeding, though, not a good deal, because if it's left up to the playoff committee, they're going to see the SEC and the Big Ten higher. We saw last year, nobody was above, I think, nobody was in the top 15 in the final ranking. So what does that mean? That means you get worse matchups earlier, right? And a 16-team extended playoff. That means that you may have to play more games depending on where you're seated in that playoff, which is not good. If they do the straight seeding versus what they did last year, which was conference champions advance to a certain part of the playoff seeding process. So there are folks that are in favor of it among the conferences. I'm not in favor of it because, quite frankly, parity or not, you can't game the system. And that's what's happening right now. You're basically throwing your hands up in the air. And the reason they're doing it is for money. That's ultimately it, because the higher ranked teams are going to get more eyeballs. And guess what? ESPN owns the playoff. And if they have more teams in the playoff, their SEC teams and their Big Ten portion of the contract, they want more SEC teams in. They want them in there to draw more eyeballs and sell more advertising dollars because they don't make money without it. They literally don't make money until the end of the year. So for UCF football, it's imperative that as we go down this rabbit hole with regard to the playoffs and the playoff seeding and everything else that's associated with it, that the Big 12, it may not be quite on par with whatever it ends up being. We saw that in the last round of negotiations for the distribution money, but it needs to be equitable enough that we get enough teams in there to share in that distribution as well. So UCF ultimately, no matter what happens, is in a better situation than what it was before. So let's start with that. I do think that UCF ultimately will need us to fight for the seeding because right now it's not in our favor. And that's what the Big 12 Conference is talking about right now in Orlando. So let's talk about that playoff format. So there a lot of movement has happened in the last, I would say, 2 to 3 maybe weeks on that. The Big Ten, the SEC has been kind of leading the charge once they've accepted that. And right now they're promoting the 4-4-2-2-1 format. So what does that mean? 16 teams total. 4 from the SEC, 4 from the Big Ten, 2 from the Big 12, 2 from the ACC, and 1 G5. The rest would be at large, or quote unquote at large. The proposals right now are just to pick an at large or to have a play-in similar to what basketball does, where you have play-in games there as well, which would mean you would pit the 2 lower ranked teams or the 4 lowest ranked teams against each other to play into the playoff, which means they're playing extra games. How does that work for the college football season? The other thing that they're talking about is the postseason. Where do you fit those games in? Right now, they're talking about putting them in the Army-Navy game. So that is one version. They're also promoting 3-3. 3-3-3-3-1 was another version of that. Notre Dame, notably, which is super important, has come out and said they do not support this format. Notre Dame swings a big stick when it comes to the playoff in college football as a whole. So having Notre Dame on side is super important for the ability for the SEC and the Big Ten to push this through. Now, what does this do again for the playoff, especially if by 2030 we lose, we lose the ACC? We saw what happened when the ACC and the Big Ten came together in the alliance and kind of poo-pooed the expansion of the playoff to begin with. The SEC and ESPN just wreaked havoc with the sport. If further down the road the ACC does split, and I do believe that that's going to happen, there could be a potential for either a 4-4-3 or a 5-5-3-1 configuration at that point. So what do you do if you're Brett Yormark? Do you push the needle? Do you try to push for a secret handshake deal on the back end saying, hey, the ACC is going to implode anyway? Or what do you do in that situation? If it were me, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. I would make sure that I'm pushing back on that no matter what. If Notre Dame truly is in that camp and they're not just posturing, then I would be holding hands with them. I would not push back to the point where we get the same treatment that the ACC did after the alliance. As far as UCF's chances are, what does this mean versus what its access is right now? Let's be real. If they go the straight seeding, which we just talked about earlier, and we saw what they did last year in ranking all those SEC teams, the Big 12 could very well be a one-bid conference. And having two chances to get to the playoff out of the 16 teams is a better opportunity than what UCF has ever had. Is it the right opportunity for the conference and everyone else? Probably not. But ultimately, it's a win-win-win for us. And the more guaranteed slots we get in, the higher the payout it is for the Power Four between 2026 and 2030. Now, one of the other pieces that kind of mixes in with this is you've got the NCAA lawsuit. Remember that thing that was hanging out there that we were all getting ready with regards to the NIL and how Terry Mohajir had brought in-house our NIL efforts, et cetera. There were some question marks on whether there was going to be pushback on that, but it looks like as of the last couple of days that the players have all accepted the guardrails the way that they've been put in place and the lawsuit have been put in place. What it also does is it generated some talking points from Greg Sankey. Who's Greg Sankey? Obviously, we all know he's the SEC commissioner, and that's important. What he has said and what his new hill to die on or soapbox is that the Power Four was granted more autonomy last year. For those of you that missed it, last year the Power Four conference was given more levity than it was even in the original playoff agreement. In addition to that, currently 65% of the voting membership has to it lies within the Power Five. And for thresholds and being able to pass legislation for the whole NCAA, including decisions on divisional splits and all of that other stuff, that does not meet the threshold. There's not enough voting power concentrated within the P4 to make that stuff happen. So what he's doing is he's proposing a 68% voting share for those in the P4. So currently, with the 65%, that requires four conferences, the four Power Four conferences, to vote on anything from an autonomy perspective. All of them have to approve whatever the changes are. By changing it to 68% and based on the current composition of the conferences, that's no longer the case. That means you only have to have three conferences in alignment to be able to make decisions on autonomy and who participates in that level and whether you should separate to another division or some sort of other separation that doesn't exist today. So I don't think this has anything to do with the power conferences fully separating from the NCAA, but what it does do is it allows them to make decisions for three conferences that affect all four. So when you start thinking about, okay, who has direct access to the playoff, what happened to the Pac-12, you can now do that with three conferences. So at that point, you could go to three power conferences, and that sets the stage for 2030. What happens in 2030? Well, the ACC's media contract is up. FSU has already said that they're going to bolt. Clemson is going to bolt. And we should start hearing about that probably a year or two out from that happening. So legislatively, it allows that to happen and to be able to pull the power into those three conferences without including that four. I don't think the ACC is going to go the way of the Pac-12. I don't think it's going to be completely split apart and then reconstituted with G5 and then move lower, because I don't think there's enough properties to fill up. I don't think there's enough spots in the other conferences to pull those properties up. But it also means that when we're talking about things like playing ball with the playoff and doing those kinds of things, Brett Yormark has to be playing the long game, because if there's a possibility that this passes, and there's a real possibility that it will, that three conferences can make the decision for all four, then it's who's going to break up. Is it the Big 12 or is it the ACC? Right now, it looks like the ACC, but this all ties together and it's all happening right now. But in the last week or two, all of this stuff has been happening. And I can't tell you enough of how much that impacts UCF long-term. Playoff access, dollars in our coffers, competition on NIL, the ability to make the playoff and what that distribution looks like, and even back to autonomy and the ability to be part of an autonomous conference that we currently enjoy. So college football is a world of change. Who knows how it's going to change, but the ACC is going to try to poach some of the Big 12. And I guarantee you the Big 12 is already ready to poach the ACC. One last note on all of this. The Big 12 recently met, within the past 6 months, with a investment group. That investment group could give the capital to help us do those acquisitions for those other conference members. So something to keep in mind, but we're gearing up for a fight with the ACC, I think, for an ultimate Power 3 conference showdown. That's all I'm going to say about that. I've kind of jumped around a little bit, but try to string it together. It's good to keep an eye on this, because what's happening now is going to affect UCF for the next probably 10 years. In addition to that, we are officially less than 100 days out from the season. 100 days, folks. That's great news. A little over 3 months. The team will be coming back for fall camp really in about 2 months. A reconstituted team with more people that have transferred in, and I'm excited to see what that team looks like going onto the field for the fall, because I do think that you're going to see some spots that are vacant coming out of spring going into fall that are going to be replaced, especially with some of the injuries that we had coming out of spring. But I am excited about that. In addition to that, linebacker Michael McClinton decommits from the class. So he was one of our earlier commits. He was, how should I say this? He was a local kid. He's 6 foot 225, so decent size, but he's a little bit on the smaller size. Actually measures in around 5'11". He was a composite 3-star. His offers were basically Jack State, Arkansas State, App State, FIU, those types of folks. And he's now transferring somewhere else. So ultimately, I don't think this is a huge loss. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He probably wasn't going to get much playing time with the folks that we have brought in. So for me, hate to see anybody go, but I don't think Michael McClinton was going to have an opportunity, probably not this year and probably not in the future. But it does suck to see a local kid go. We talked about the Big 12 meetings. We talked about the NCAA lawsuit. Are there new uniforms on the horizon? We recently had the yard sale. If those of you got to take advantage of the yard sale, there was some pretty sweet deals to be had, and there's a reason for that. And that is The uniforms themselves, all accounts seem to point to the fact that they are going to be getting a rework. So hopefully no more of the Terry Mohajir, hopefully some more of that UCF flash that we had. If you look at our background, it's UCF Fierce. And it won't be the same Nike level complete redo that we saw when Frost came in the first time, but Frost is trying to put his stamp on this team and bring back a little bit that flash, that confidence, that bravado that we had. And there will be new uniforms. UCF Equipment responded to a tweet that UCF Football put out there that said, "What are you looking forward to in the football season?" And UCF Equipment said new uniforms. And there have been rumors that have kind of talked about that as well. So although it is the off season and although it is the summer, there is some UCF football news to talk about. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about one more quick transfer, but this time on the hoops side. This happened last week. Devan Cambridge has committed to UCF. So he is a forward that was from Texas Tech, which is interesting because Texas Tech has a lot of cash and they've been spending money on UCF players lately. But let's talk a little bit about who he is. So for the last 3 seasons, he's been playing since 2019. But I do want a 2019-2020 season. But I do want to specifically talk about the last 3 years. He averaged 9.8 points, 10.5 points, and then 5.5 points per game. Last season, his minutes did go down from 26 minutes last season to 17 and a half. He's 6'6", 210, and he's a shooter. So I think Johnny Dawkins has been looking for some shooters to make up for last year. When Ben ever gets back from his vacation, he was out for 2 weeks celebrating his anniversary. We'll talk about that in more depth. But he shot 59% from the floor last year, 52.7 the year before. From the behind the arc, he shot 57.1% and was a 75% free throw shooter. He's got 3.5 rebounds per game, 0.3 steals, and 1.5. Now, in previous seasons when he had more minutes, he was averaging around 5 rebounds and about 1 assist, 1 block, half a steal, and only 1 turnover. So he's got some solid numbers. He's got decent size, and he's a shooter behind the arc, and he's also a shooter from the floor, which is exactly what we need. And it looked like his time was going to be coming. His minutes were going to be reduced again this year, and hopefully we'll be the beneficiary of that this year. Let's talk a little bit about UCF Baseball. So UCF Baseball finished out the season since the last time we spoke. Obviously, this may be old news for some of you, but we wanted to give our spin and our take on UCF Baseball season. UCF Baseball underachieved. Let's just be frank, straight up, whatever. Coming out of the out-of-conference, which was not an easy out-of-conference schedule, we were feeling pretty good. There was no doubt in our mind that this team was a Big 12 team and had a shot at potentially hosting a regional. So what happened in that middle part of the season when we got into conference play? Well, we kind of got a little bit of a look in from Coach, and basically he said he verified what we all saw, which was the pitching took a dip. And the reason the pitching took a dip, Coach Wally said, A, we had injuries, B, they had to switch the rotations because of those injuries, and 3, we just didn't outperform. And his asked what the biggest difference was in the Big 12 this year, and his lessons learned, it's we need stronger pitching. Now, that's kind of crazy, right? Because the pitching staff, and you heard us wax poetic about this, is the depth of the pitching staff that we had. And we had some really good performances from certain players, but then you saw Staggs go down. You saw Sundin had an injury that kept him out for most of the season. But from the pitching side, you saw Staggs struggle there for a bit. And some of the other pitchers, especially when we talk about closers. This team lost a lot of close games. They lost about 8 games in the middle of the season that they should not have lost. Either they were leading going into the 8th inning and just fell apart in the end, or something happened where we lost games that we shouldn't have. This team was better than, I hate to say this because you always hear this, hey, this team is better than how they performed. And guess what? The wins and losses and the results are what they are. That's true. They are what they are. We didn't even make the Big 12 tournament, and that's extremely disappointing. We had really good hitting this year. I know it doesn't seem like it because we lost a lot of games, but our individual performances hitting, most of the players this year were above 300 hitting, almost all of them. But what we did do is we left a record number of players on base. You can't do that when you're playing at this level. I think it was something like 260 some runners in scoring position that we left on base. 260 some runs. And with as many close games as we lost, or potential runs, let me say it that way, with as many games that we lost closely, if we were able to hit effectively and bring those guys across the plate, we would have been much better. The other thing that I think was terrible, and you saw Coach Wally get onto the field more, was our base running. We took way too many chances in close games, and we didn't deliver. Our base running, our third base coach, was actually pulled for several games because he took chances that we shouldn't have taken in situations that we shouldn't have taken them. So that was a huge loss. And it's kind of crazy because he's been around a long time with UCF, and our base running has usually been a strength for us. We also didn't have a lot of power hitters, or as many power hitters as we thought we would, to be able to scrape those guys off base and bring them in. But we did see flashes like Jimenez. Jimenez will be drafted in the draft coming up in, I think it's 4 weeks. You did watch several MLB players take the field. Is this team collectively better than last year's team on paper? Yes. But last year's team also made it to a regional and pushed FSU in that regional to a win. This year's team didn't push them to a close win for them to move on. This year's team didn't even make the Big 12 tournament. So what's the takeaway? Well, the takeaway is we had the team, we had the players, we played well enough to lose close games, and usually when that happens, it flips. So next season, I expect this team to play better. We're going to add a few pieces. The question is how many of these guys can we keep? Because Demas Ross, who was a great leadoff hitter, Antonio Jimenez is draft eligible. Antonio Jimenez will not be back on the team next year. I don't see a way that he comes back on the team because I think he's going to be a first rounder and probably within the first 150 or so players that are draft eligible. So I expect he's going to be gone. Espinal will also be draft eligible. He was on a tear early on, hit a slump. He's a good hitter. He's a little bit smaller in stature, but for someone who specializes in hitting, that's actually a good thing because your strike zone is smaller. Dylan King is draft eligible. He had a great year this year as well. With Sundin's absence, he was raking him for extra bases as well. And the one question, and it's crazy because we were so excited about Sonny when he came to the table as a freshman, and he hit so well. I don't know if Sundin's actually going to get a chance. I hope he does, but I don't know if he will. Lex Bodeker, same kind of thing. Consistent guy. Has been with UCF the whole time. He's a guy who deserves a shot. But he's probably going to go minor league ball, and we'll see where he takes it from there. It's 20 rounds of opportunities for these guys to leave. As far as pitching is concerned, Sosnowski's probably gone, Stagliano's probably gone, and Castellano will all have a shot as well. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that plays out. But I think as far as the UCF baseball team is concerned, I think it proves that we had the talent, we just couldn't get it done. So that's UCF baseball in a shot this year. We were excited about the team. We ran into a buzzsaw with the pitching and the injuries and towards the middle, and we left on a disappointment. So I'm hoping next year will be better. Alan was supposed to be joining us tonight, as was Josh. Josh is out because he had an AC failure, and it's 110 degrees in his house right now, so he couldn't record. And I'm not sure where Alan is, but so we'll have to skip over the Alan's oxymoronic stat of the week for this week. I do want to give a quick shout out to listener love. We did add some more viewers and subscribers the past couple of weeks. As I said, we hit over, I think it ended up being 17,000 views in 28 days. So thank all of you. Thank you for those that joined and subscribed. We cannot see you if you set your subscribes as private. So all those folks, I can't shout you out, but I want to give you a shout out anyway. And then also a shout out to Coach Wash, who followed as well. We grow this channel and grow our reach by you guys subscribing, liking, sharing. So please make sure you continue to do that. Something that I did want to update you guys on the quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch for this week. The UCF softball team did end up falling to number 3 Texas 9-0 in the NCAA Austin Regional Final. They did lose to Michigan early on, but this team did come back and beat Michigan pretty handily and then lost to number 3 Texas. I did not expect this team to beat Texas. They're too young, and they weren't ready. What did excite me about this team is that this is a very, very, very young team. You'll see a few new faces next year, but not as many as you would think. We've got a good young pitching staff too. Pretty good aces that in the circle that are coming in. We'll add to that next year. But they played really, really well, and our hitting came on. So the younger hitters have finally started hitting their stride towards the end of the season. So that all bodes well for next year. So this softball team, if you did not watch them, make sure you're keeping an eye on them next year. This is a team that has now positioned itself as a consistent postseason team. And this has been one of the best programs and one of the most successful programs since UCF started a little over 20 years ago. So make sure you're watching this team. This is a young team. This is a team that you can follow. And this is a team that deserves your attention. So in addition to that, we had number 15 UCF rowing. Yes, they're ranked number 15, and they won the Big 12 title. This is the first program to win a Big 12 title. So they're heading to the NCAA championships. But that's a huge deal. This, we've always had a successful rowing program, perennially winning the AAC, but now we've moved up to a higher level of competition. And we have consistently won this year. And not only did we win, but we won by a wide margin against very highly ranked teams. And thus we're number 15. So keep an eye on UCF rowing over the next several weeks as they move on to the NCAA championship. UCF also won the indoor and outdoor 4x400 relay championship in the Big 12. Next, they're going to be going to the NCAA East preliminaries to compete for a championship there. That 4x400 relay team has done extremely well this year and have been consistently good and consistently building. So that's it for this week. Unfortunately, I don't have the guys, so I got to do a lot of the talking. So really what you listened to was 44 minutes of me talking. However, usually we have the other guys chiming in as well. If any of you have any other comments that you'd like to share or any points that you'd like to make or anything that you'd like for me to talk about, the comments are open. But other than that, keep an eye, as we talked about earlier in the show. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the playoff over the next couple of weeks, what comes out of the Big 12 meetings in Orlando. Keep an eye on what Greg Sankey is saying and changing that from 65 to 68%, because that really does create a de facto power 3. Make sure you're keeping an eye on what the straight seeding means because I'm not a proponent of it. And the good news is that Notre Dame is not a proponent of it either. And lastly, make sure you're keeping an eye again on that NCAA lawsuit that's coming down that will govern NIL. And it looks like it will shift, as we originally thought, over to the new model by the time June rolls around in the new academic year. So without anything else really to talk about, because it's the doldrums of summer, and without anybody else here by my side this week, I want to wish you guys a happy Memorial Day. I want to thank everyone again who's served, has lost someone, or was a family member, because as a former dependent, I know how difficult that is. I want you guys to keep watching our shorts. We appreciate you helping us hit 17,000. Make sure views this past month. Please make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing. Go Knights and charge on.